So just go whenever.
Alright, so I'll be presenting on an overview of waterfowl and kind of like the history of waterfowl, how they came to be. So starting off, we have what are waterfowl? First off, waterfowl are any bird within the order Anseriformes. There's nearly 180 living species and plenty of extinct species. So some general characteristics: a broad bill, short legs, webbed feet, prominent neck, an overall large size, and lastly powerful wings. Here this trumpeter swan shows a lot of these characteristics, and we'll get into some more waterfowl here soon. So what is the importance of waterfowl? Natural beauty. Many people love going out and just bird watching. It's a pretty big hobby. Here in South Dakota, hunting is very big, especially in waterfowl. People love hunting waterfowl here in South Dakota. So there are many hobbies. They are also great indicators of ecosystem health. They have a few links to water quality. Birds generally like clean bodies of water. If a lake is dirty or unclean, they're probably not going to be in that lake. So avian variants in nutrient polluted water. So this is just a paper on how a population of waterfowl at a certain lake had shifted over the years. In years of clean water, there were a high population of waterfowl. In years of dirty water, it was very low, and the species had completely shifted. So birds are just in general reactive to changes in the environment. Something changes in the environment, they may leave. Conservation. So there's some conservation efforts in the waterfowl community, especially in the wetlands habitats. Wetlands are their official habitat, their natural habitat, and here in North America, we've lost about 60% of our natural wetlands. And I mentioned waterfowl hunting earlier. It's a big, you can't overhunt waterfowl, or at least we try not to. We don't want to extinct any species. So many government programs will run hunting services to limit how much waterfowl can be hunted. Waterfowl can also improve the environment. Based on their diet, they can actually improve biodiversity by spreading seeds around. Here in Hawaii, a lot of their native seed dispersers had actually gone extinct, and a lot of introduced waterfowl have actually taken over that role. Importance continued. This is just a paper on lesser scops' relation with zebra mussels. These are lesser scaup, that's a zebra mussel. Zebra mussels are extremely invasive and very hard to get rid of once they're in a lake or body of water. And so lesser scaup have been known to eat a lot of zebra mussel. And many other waterfowl also eat zebra mussels. This is just lesser scaup focused. So it took place in Michigan at a Cook nuclear plant. The lake had become infested in 1991. They took 50 lesser scaup from the plant. They had them because they got sucked into the intake pipes. They extracted the gastrointestinal tract and the stomach, and they preserved the contents of the stomach. So they averaged about 260 zebra mussels per scaup and a maximum of 987. So as you can see, it's a very high number. And all the zebra mussels were all less than 10 millimeters, so they're all really small, but still they eat a ton of them, which is very important. They can actually control the number. So why do waterfowl migrate? Migration is a big thing in waterfowl. So there's two major ones every year, one in autumn, one in spring. So the autumn is to avoid starvation. Obviously in the winter it gets very cold, so if they migrate away south in the winter, they're going to avoid the cold conditions and be able to continue eating in the south when food sources aren't frozen over there. In the spring, there's a higher emphasis on breeding, so they migrate north in the spring and they just breed. So some benefits of migration: it keeps the gene pool large. This is one of the things that has allowed waterfowl to become so great and continue to be so diverse to this day. There's just more mating opportunities when they're all migrating to one place. And there's preferable habitats for nesting in the spring when everything's thawing out and stuff is beginning to grow back. There are risks: starvation, inclement weather, and habitat loss. Starvation and inclement weather go hand in hand. Inclement weather, if they come back too early and there's still snow on the ground and it's frozen conditions, their food sources may be frozen over. And habitat loss. When birds migrate out, they'll often migrate back to the same place, and if their natural habitat had been obstructed or destroyed while they were away, they may be in a bad condition when they get there. So some weather-related deaths going off the risk of migration. Troutman did a survey in which he was just trying to see what the population looked like that year. To begin with, he noted that it was 5 times larger than usual. He accounted this due to overfeeding in a mild winter. But once March hit, the year had completely changed. There was constant inclement weather, everything was frozen over. He actually recorded the ice to be 7 inches thick, which is insane. Over 900 waterfowl with 2 weeks to fly, and there were over 300 dead. Here's just kind of some data on the paper. So this is the normal weight range of the birds. This happens to be coots, a type of waterfowl. Anything in this range is a normal weight. These are individuals. Anything to the left is underweight. They're all dead, of course, so anything to the left most likely died of starvation. Here on the right, we just have the same thing. Here are the ranges, just different waterfowl. Anything to the left of those lines is going to be underweight, so there are risks to migration. A lot of them will die in a bad year. So let's get into some actual species here. I'm sure we've all seen this one before, Canada geese. They're very large, environmentally tolerant. They can be just about anywhere in North America all year round, and they eat mostly vegetation. So like I stated earlier, characteristics of waterfowl, look at this long neck, really long neck, and these huge powerful wings. I mean, for that large size, you really have to get massive powerful wings there. And we can't forget the webbed feet for a water-based lifestyle. That's a really common one. I'm sure we've all seen this one before. Here we have lesser scaup, often found in ponds and lakes. We have them here in Yankton. I believe they're still out there when I checked last week. So they're very common. They're black front, black head, and white wings. So that's kind of their distinct characteristics there. You can see their broad bill there. And obviously if we looked under the water, if they were on land, we'd see webbed feet. So they're diving ducks, which means they're diving under the water to get their food, fish or vegetation. So mollusks, aquatic vegetation. So common goldeneye, they look very similar to lesser scaup, but note this little white cheek pouch and a complete white body, very distinct. They're also diving ducks, so they're going to be eating your fish, mollusks, crustaceans, and lastly, they're found mostly in lakes and rivers. We also have them here in Yankton, but I believe they've migrated north, so you probably won't be seeing them much anymore, but come next winter, you'll be seeing them. So broad bill, webbed feet. If their wings were out, you'd see they're pretty powerful. All right, let's get into some ancestors, the history of waterfowl. So this is Asteronius. It's actually thought to be one of the earliest birds. 67 million years ago is what they date it back to. Possibly one of the earliest waterfowl ancestors. I should mention that it's not an Anseriformes, which means it's not a waterfowl directly. They say it's actually more closely related to a Galliformes, which is your chickens. And you can kind of see that. They think it had a terrestrial lifestyle. And lastly, there's similarities in the limbs and the skull. Obviously, looking at this picture, this illustration, it has a head just like a bird you'd see today. And the legs especially, those feet, I mean, you can't mistake that for a bird there. And obviously these wings are getting pretty prominent for how early on this is. So this is one of the earliest ancestors. Moving forward just a little bit, we have Bigavis. They date it back to 66.5 million years ago. It's very closely related to Anseriformes, but not directly. Some interesting characteristics is I actually did a CT scan on their syrinx, and this is the noise producing feature in most waterfowl. So they likely believe that it honked like a modern goose, which is interesting. Lastly, a hardened bone condition. So looking at the fossils, they have an interesting condition in which the bones have hardened in a strange way, which correlates to modern Anseriformes. They have a similar hardened bone condition. In this illustration here, you can really see the webbed feet, the broad bill, the wings. I mean, it looks just like a modern waterfowl you'd see out on the lake. Moving forward just a little bit more, Presbyornis, 61 million years ago. This is actually thought to be the earliest direct ancestor, meaning it is considered a waterfowl. It actually has one of the most complete fossil collections of any waterfowl we have. It has a similar size and shape of a goose with longer legs. So in this picture you can see, I mean, that looks just like a goose, but those long legs are kind of set it apart. They found it to have similar nesting habits as modern Anseriformes. So they find them in huge clustered groups, meaning that they probably were fossilized or died in the breeding season, since they're all so closely together. They also were found in similar habitats by the edges of lakes, the edge of water bodies, where there's going to be a lot of fish and food for them. And they're very widespread species. They've actually been found in big numbers throughout North America and Asia, meaning that they most likely were able to fly and migrate around. Moving on, we have Dromornis. This is actually a very recent one, 8 million years ago. It was a flightless bird, possibly one of the heaviest birds to actually exist, getting up to 500 pounds. It was an aggressive territorial bird, much like an emu or an ostrich. They're too big for their own good. Being so big, if there's so many in an area, there's not going to be enough food for all of them. So they probably starved out, and they also had a case selection strategy, or at least they think they did, meaning they're going to have just 1 or 2 offspring in a long period of time, and those are going to take a long time to grow up. Meaning if their offspring are killed, that's going to be detrimental to the population, since they're not breeding so much. So here's actually a fossil picture. I mean, you can just see how huge they get, and they kind of look like an ostrich or an emu, which isn't Anseriformes, but it is a close ancestor. Lastly, Conflicto, extremely newly described species. I actually had a really hard time finding any information, but it's a paper from 2019, I believe, thought to be the earliest Anseriformes. But one of the problems with the paper I found, it has only a partially complete fossil, meaning there's some stuff missing. Hopefully we can find that, but like I said earlier, it's so new, I had a really hard time finding reliable information. But I mean, you can see the broad bill, the legs, has all the characteristics of a typical waterfowl. So, my references, and thank you for watching my presentation. Thank you. All right, got it.